Hello and welcome to episode 4 of David versus Goliath, The Adventures of a Pro Se Litigant, which is myself. This is the story of a civil lawsuit process that I'm in the midst of. I am playing the role of David. My name is George, and this is a lawsuit with IBM. I'm going to start with disclaimer. I'm not a legal professional, so this is no way should be construed as legal advice, and I'm only reporting my recent experiences and observations. We're going to get into Medicare and medical topics at different times. I'm not a medical or insurance professional, so this discussion in no way should be considered medical insurance, or Medicare advice, and I'm only reporting my recent experiences and observations. There is a current civil action in progress between myself and IBM, so any comments or implications I make of wrongdoing regarding IBM are alleged and are in my filed complaint. IBM has not admitted to my allegations, and the outcome to the complaint is not resolved. The wrongdoing I allege is age discrimination. And I'll show you a timeline shortly on where we are, and then I'll talk about what today's topics are. The target audience for these videos, one is IBM Medicare eligible retirees who are facing the exact same issue as I do with their IBM sponsored HRA, which is a health reimbursement account. There's a larger topic here in general to do with the options of what to do with the 20% that Medicare doesn't cover. And so, this issue I'm in with IBM is not unique to retirees and IBM. It's with other corporations as well. As my civil action is being delivered without an attorney called Pro Se, I'm trying to share what that experience like, because I found there was very little that I got at the outset to help me decide whether this was going to be successful or not. And if anyone is considering it, then I think some of my experiences are of interest. And then anyone interested in a general David versus Goliath, oppressed versus oppressed story, this one is a pretty good one. These are two of the tips for the potential pro se litigant that I'll always come back to. Take things one step at a time. It's pretty enormous to think of the whole process. And build your team, because you really can't do it alone. And I talk about that at different points. Here's where we are on a timeline. And basically the complaint was filed in mid-November. IBM was supposed to respond by December 9th. They missed that date. December 11th, they asked for another 30 days. We have now passed January the 10th, and so we do have a motion to dismiss from IBM's counsel. And sometime this month, or actually by February 4th, my response is due on how do I respond to this motion. Okay, so here I am back, and for today's topics, I really have three. One is a little bit of a bio about me, and that's because on some of my feedback, there's questions about my background and where I'm from and all that. I'll talk about the details of getting started on the litigation, and that's some of the instructions that I got, and one particular form called the cover sheet, and we'll have a look at that. And then the wrapping topic is something that I really thought about throughout various times of this decision, is what are my odds of success, and how do I define success? And the first answer that I got up front, to tell you the truth, was when I was Googling it initially, and I saw a little Google entry that said odds of success were 10%, and if you had a pro bono lawyer, could be as high as 40%. So 10% didn't sound too good. And then when I was on my second round of Quest for Counsel, one of the first guys I was talking to, I said, I read this thing on Google that said I had about 10% odds of winning this, and he said I'd give you less than that. And then I didn't use the 40%. I said, and if I had a pro bono lawyer, I could move that up to 30%, I said, and his answer was depends on who you get. So these weren't particularly encouraging numbers, but we'll look at the results of the study that I found, which is quite interesting. So I'm going to start with the story of who is George. So that's me, George Adamavicius. I studied electrical engineering, so that is my background. And at the time of this chart, I had 30 plus years with IBM. I actually retired after 42 years. So this chart is goes up to about 7 years before my retirement. There's a timeline going back to 1975 and then beyond into 2005, and you'll see how it builds. I started in Canada, so until 1997, my career was in Canada. My studies and career was in Canada, and then we moved to the U.S. in '97. I went to Queen's University in Canada. The most interesting thing I think that Queen's is noted for is that is the college university where Elon Musk had his first year of engineering. So he was a Queen's Applied Science student. I believe he was there in the 80s, so I was a little bit ahead of him. After graduation, I got a job with Bell Canada Engineering, and for a little while I was working on data circuits for the telephone company. 1978, I went into IBM manufacturing. I was an IBM manufacturing engineer. Around 80, I moved into sales. That was a very unusual move within IBM at that time. Oh, even the manufacturing hire was an unusual one because they hired at that time almost 100% out of college, direct out of college, and here I was already coming from another company. That was called, in their language, a professional hire, and it was very unusual. And the move from manufacturing to sales was unusual at that time. So I did that for a while, and I enjoyed it so much that I needed a break, and I took a break into IBM Sales School, which was an internal school where I was an educator teaching other sales reps, how to take on their territories. I went back to sales again after that, and at a time when IBM was going through a lot of transition, possibly was going to be broken up in the mid-90s. We had a new CEO called Lou Gerstner in the U.S. I moved to the PC company. That was a dramatic shift from very large account sales just before that, and now a distribution two-tier model. Selling parts and PCs. And in that process, I got to know another division of IBM, more in the US, IBM Network Hardware, and I actually got them to offer me a job in 1997. So I moved to Raleigh, North Carolina. I used to be in Toronto, Canada. And then IBM sold that division to Cisco, or most of it, and I moved into IBM Software. This now became sort of product management jobs. Then I got into special solutions for a little while, and finally back towards the end into a pure sales job. And I finished my career really involved in software sales in IBM, so 42 plus years. So at the time, it was over 30 years. This is a pitch when I used to go and talk about engineering to middle school students, and basically I tried to explain what engineering was. It was solving problems and always reusing what I learned. Now let me come back to control here. There I am. All right, that's enough about me. I wanted to talk a little bit now about really the first things you do to get a suit started. And I think I explained in one of the earlier videos how I did get a help from my first dial-a lawyer, and one of the things that she did for me was I said, I don't even know where to get started. And she said, I'll send you a list of the documents that you need. And I said, that would be great. So let's take a look a little bit at what I got. There we are. And I think we saw this in the last episode. This was my right to sue letter from the EEOC after I got IBM charged there in September. So I have 90 days to file, and so now my big problem, going back to one problem at a time, how do I file? So it turns out, if you go down to the federal court and you ask, you'll probably get yourself something like this. I was too embarrassed to go down and ask something as dumb as that, like, I want to file a suit, I don't even know where to start. Instead, what I went down with was I had the list of instructions from the first referral lawyer I talked to, and basically I went down as, do I have the right list? And I'll show you those two lists now. The upper part of this is what's out of this presentation that we're just looking at that I got from the court, and the lower one where the red arrow is, these are bullets out of the email that she sent me, which had basically the same forms as above, but even the links to the actual website where I could get that form. So when I saw that, I was off to the races. I'll just point out there is one slight difference between what I got from the law clerk's office and the list from my dial a lawyer, and that is the complaint. She just gave me the link to the general complaint, and if you see above, there's a general and an employment discrimination complaint. So there's a couple extra pages where you put in, what was the name of your EEOC, or what was the number of your EEOC charge, and there's also an opportunity there to, I checked off ADEA, which was the Disabilities Act, and we'll talk about that in a minute too. But I want to just talk here about the civil cover sheet, and this is where, when I had a good look at that, I had my first sinking feeling. So here it is. This is the one that goes with the whole complaint and the summons, and you have to complete this sheet. And it's a good one. I only focused on the bottom part because somewhere in here you have to decide under which law or statute you are actually complaining. And you can see there's ones for real property at the left, civil rights, prisoner petitions, immigration issues. So I finally checked at the right. I looked for ERISA. I couldn't find it, ERISA. So I found 890 other statutory actions. I put an X there. The origin in V below that, it's an original proceeding. Cause of action. So this is my language. Cite the U.S. civil statute under which you're filing. So I'm filing under the Employment Retirement Income Security Act of 1974, ERISA, two particular paragraphs, section 510 and 502. And those are important when we get to the later motions. Brief description. Respondent applied discriminatory segmentation to all retirees' access to Healthcare Reimbursement Act. So I'm saying that there was a discriminatory action and some kind of segmentation. That's a very quick summary. Now I thought this was interesting. Do I want a jury trial? And I said no. And I signed it. And that's what went with the whole thing. And then I wondered, what my odds are. So I did after time, another interest, besides the examples I told you of the 10% odds and then less than 10%. One of the feedbacks on, one place is I posted some of this, which I thought was interesting. It came back and said 96% of these settle. And I haven't had anybody come and offer a settlement. I'll show you that isn't quite the correct statistic. So after a lot of hunting, I finally stumbled across this from Hastings Law Journal. This is out in California, I think, and it's from the late 1990s. And it was a study in one district in Northern California, and it was looking at pro se cases over a year. And it was over 600, so they went to a 1 in 3 sampling. They took every third one, and they basically studied them into what kinds of categories of complaint were they, and what were the outcomes. What was sort of the spread of the outcomes and what types of outcomes. So here are here's a distribution of the complaints. If you can see, bankrupt. This is now, if you total these up, it's a little over 200. All these vertical bars. The bankruptcy was only 5. Civil rights, that's interesting, 67. Other, it turned out in the fine print that the majority of the other was lawyers coming back fighting disbarment. Because, of course, as disbarment, once they're disbarred, they're no longer lawyers, so they're coming back as citizens, and so there's a pro se suit. So a lot of that 82 is lawyers doing disbarment. And it took me a while to hunt and find that I think I'm, in my case, at the very right statutory, since it's a statutory federal statute, and well, that's there. I couldn't see another category that would go into. So not a lot, and back to it's like, is this? Have I come with something unusual? And sort of what are the resulting judgments? Well, against was 76.2, not applicable 20.3, 4. So that's, I guess there's two kind of judgments. Did you say you win, or did you have a successful outcome, or was a judgment 4? But basically that's the well under 10%. Well under 10% are successful. Now it could be then that a bunch of these that come in are not seriously done and are kind of frivolous. It's hard to say. I guess if they came in handwritten on a roll of toilet paper, they have to accept it and try and apply the process to it. So again, I'm fighting to not fail in this effort. Now the split of outcomes is where I got really interested. So here's what happens to the claims overall and at the end. So 56% were unable to survive a preliminary motion to dismiss. 56%. So that is where I am right now. I have a motion to dismiss from IBM, and so odds are, according to this, that I will not survive this and it'll be the end after this. So in the chess game, January the 10th, IBM filed their motion to dismiss. I have a 21-day timer, and so I have to file a response and hopefully convince the judge in that response to not dismiss the case and carry on. So what are the other possible outcomes? Well, the first one of 11, dismissal by request. Number 2, the 15 count, that's abandonment. So that means someone like myself started it and just quit, gave up. So preliminary dismissal. Summary judgment is a direction towards basically completion without having a hearing. In other words, there's enough been presented that one side or the other has now goes to the judge and requests, hey, let's just stop, and here's enough to say you can make a judgment at this point. Remand obviously is to go somewhere else. Settlement, the guy who said 96% of these are settled, and I look here, that's 35 out of 227 or so were a settlement. There's the most interesting to me. The trial on the merits was won, which makes me wonder if I'm ever even going to meet my judge. Right? This could all this all could happen, and I never do actually even meet the judge. Okay, that's bringing me to the end of today's session. So we covered, who I am, a little bit more of my biography. I have none of the professional strengths which I talk about, medicine, lawyering, and litigation, and even discrimination. However, I'm going down the path. I've filed the suit, showed you the cover sheet, and talked about the odds of success. So I hope that helped, and any of you are continuing something like this, or starting a process like this, then I wish you all the luck, and we'll continue. Probably my next video, I will have already filed my response, and I'll see what other updates I have by then. So thank you very much for joining me for another episode 4 of David versus Goliath.